Yes. Love, like truth and beauty, is concrete. Love is not fundamentally a sweet feeling, not at heart a matter of sentiment, attachment, or being drawn toward. Love is active, effective, a matter of making reciprocal and mutually beneficial relation with one's friends and enemies. Love creates righteousness or justice here on earth. To make love is to make justice. As advocates and activists for justice know, loving involves struggle, resistance, risk. People working today on behalf of women, blacks, lesbians, and gay men, the aging, the poor in this country and elsewhere, know that making justice is not a warm, fuzzy experience. I think also that sexual lovers and good friends know that the most compelling relationships demand hard work, patience, and a willingness to endure tensions and anxiety in creating mutually empowering bonds. For this reason, loving involves commitment. We are not automatic lovers of self, others, world, or God. Love does not just happen. We are not love machines, puppets on the string of a deity called love. Love is a choice, not simply or necessarily a rational choice, but rather a willingness to be present to others without pretense or guile. Love is a conversion to humanity, a willingness to participate with others in the healing of a broken world and broken lives. Love is the choice to experience life as a member of the human family, a partner in the dance of life, rather than as an alien in the world, or as a deity above the world, aloof and apart from human flesh. Hear what the Spirit says to all people. Thanks be to God.
All right. Moon will lead us now in a hymn.
I think I've got the right one here. This is by Judy Small from Australia. Again, you please sing along. Let the rainbow shine, let the rainbow shine, at the end of the storm, let it light up the sky. No more hiding in fear, no more secrets and lies. We open our hearts and the rainbow shines. Red for the blood and red for the shame, red for the fire and the faggot's flame, red for the anger, red for the pain, orange for the new day dawning, and orange for the bitterness of hatred we know, orange for the warmth of the fireside glow, orange for the passion of love running wild, yellow for the golden moments. Let the rainbow shine, let the rainbow shine, let the rainbow shine, at the end of the storm, let it light up the sky. No more hiding in fear, no more secrets and lies. We open our hearts rainbow shines. Yellow for the sun, spreading light across the land. Yellow for the roses I place in your hand. Yellow for the citrus taste of goodbye. Green for the peace of a free soul. And green for the springtime, green for the young. Green for the songs waiting to be sung. Green for the garden fresh from the rain. Blue for the sky on a clear day. Let the rainbow shine. Let the rainbow shine. Let the rainbow shine. At the end of the storm, let it light up the sky. No more hiding in fear. No more secrets and lies. We open our hearts and the rainbow shines. Blue for the grief and blue for the tears. Blue for the chill of the winter's fears. Blue for the moonlight in my lover's eyes. Purple for the lilac flowers. Purple for the lavender ribbons we wear. Purple for the richness of moments we share. Purple for the sky at the end of the day. Red for the blush of a new love. Let the rainbow shine. Let the rainbow shine. Let the rainbow shine. At the end of the storm, let it light up the sky. No more hiding in fear. No more secrets and lies. We open our hearts. Let the rainbow shine. We open our hearts and the rainbow shine.
A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus speaks to the disciples, saying, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." The Gospel of Christ.
Now it is my pleasure to welcome Sinclair Blitcher Lohman. Sinclair has been part of Holy Trinity since before COVID-19 and New BC, worshiping with us on occasion and helping with the winter solstice retreat. They are currently among the dedicated volunteers working on the front lines to serve meals to homeless people and to the food insecure people who come to us at Holy Trinity 6 days of every week. So now, welcome to you, Sinclair. We are waiting to hear what you have to share with us.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Just want to make sure. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Diane. I have a little introduction already written, so I will just get started. Good morning. As was mentioned, my name is Sinclair Blitcher Lohman. My pronouns are they, them, and I would like to thank the Church of the Holy Trinity for welcoming me this morning. In all honesty, It is quite the surreal experience to be here with you all, let alone be giving a homily on a piece of scripture. My burgeoning relationship with Holy Trinity and with spirituality as a concept and a way of life is a relatively recent development, and given my unfamiliarity with it, one that I have kept quite private. And this privateness and the sense of surreality I mentioned earlier is an effect of what I believe to be two irreconcilable identities, that of a religious observer and that of a queer and transgendered person. When I told my friends and family that I would be giving a homily for today's Pride worship, they shared in the same surprise and confusion I had experienced when I felt compelled to accept the invitation, and with good reason. The person with which they were familiar was one whom historically oscillated between disinterest and vehement rejection of all things religious. I am, after all, the child of my mother, a characteristically skeptical humanist, and my father, who, in spite of being the son of a devout Christian father and Ashkenazi mother, identifies as a lapsed Anglican and never practicing Jewish person. So, for the greater part of my childhood, my relationship with a power higher than myself was virtually non-existent. Interestingly, I did have a brief stint of observance around the age of 15. It was during this period that I began to seriously grapple with certain long-standing feelings of alienation and the probability that I was different in some important, yet theretofore inarticulable way. After a period of introspection, it became apparent that this difference was manifest in a romantic and a sexual interest in male-identified and masculine-presenting people, and the desire to express myself in more traditionally feminine ways. And yet the prospect of merely acknowledging this idea that I might be different in this way, let alone welcoming it with acceptance, compassion, and self-love, was difficult and frightening. Nobody had modeled to me what explicit, unconditional, and non-patronizing acceptance and celebration of queerness looked like. And representations of queerness, which at the time largely centered the experiences of only the most palatable white cisgender gay men, focused either on narratives of begrudging or patronizing inclusion, contingent on their ability to approximate what was considered normal, or their condemnation and damnation based on moralistic arguments that in many ways stemmed from certain interpretations of religious texts. Due to a lack of competing narratives, I internalized the idea that the surest way to acceptance was through suppression and repentance. And so, with a confused but willing father in tow, I began to attend weekly services at St. George's Church on the Hill in Etobicoke. My hopes were twofold. Either I would receive explicit messaging that to be queer was not just worthy of acceptance, but of celebration, or if my fears of rejection were confirmed, that my willingness to change would result in my being changed. Unfortunately, neither of these hopes were realized. Yes, I was welcomed physically into the space of the church by a grinning parishioner who would shake my hand and thank me for coming. Yes, we would quote maxims on unconditional love and reciprocity, and yes, we would pass the peace to one another. But I could not shake the feeling that if I were to be found out, if I were to present authentically, that I would be denied even those formalities. There was no explicit acknowledgement of the historic and ongoing persecution of queer folks in either general society, nor specifically by the church, nor was there any sustained engagement with any community other than the predominantly white, heteronormative, and upper-class constituents of this particular congregation. Plus, the resident priest was young and charming, which made me feel very uncomfortable. And so, my belief in the incompatibility of queerness and religiosity was reaffirmed. And rather than allowing this idea to remain my own, I decided to externalize my righteous indignation. I became a militant atheist. I took every opportunity, solicited or not, to explain the superiority of scientific positivism over metaphysical understandings of the world. I became a community outreach volunteer for a local atheist magazine, cold calling constituents to ensure that they were still subscribed to our newsletter, under the ever watchful eye of a laminated poster of Christopher Hitchens, at the time my secular prophet and personal rock star, which hung behind my desk. In short, I responded to a felt sense of being shunned with resentment and aggressive retaliation. It is noteworthy and not at all coincidental that during this time, a period that spanned from my late teens to my mid-20s, I was also a not at all functioning alcoholic and drug addict. And while I will not go into detail, suffice it to say that my behavior was not born out of some inherent badness, but from a sense of feeling uncared for, not caring for myself, and subsequently an inability to care about anybody else. And it was spurned by a resentment that stemmed from the belief that this feeling was not simply something I had made up in my mind, but was an effect of a system in which everybody was implicated, and one which we were all responsible for addressing in certain ways. I would only come to this realization after a 7-week stint in a rehabilitation facility in Toronto's Northeast End, and 1 year's worth engagement with one of the few queer and trans-friendly Alcoholic Anonymous groups in the city of Toronto, known as Spiritual Kindergarten. While I will not deny the positive impacts that the AA model has had on many people, it is a notoriously inaccessible and problematic framework. And while I am still grappling with the inconsistencies between what is being practiced and what is being preached in these spaces, it is noteworthy that it is within these spaces of recovery, surrounded by the members of the LGBTQ2IA+ community and those who do not necessarily identify as such, but whom appreciated the unique yet heterogeneous experiences of those who did, that I, for the first time, felt truly welcome. Not in spite of my differences, but because of them. So upon reading today's gospel excerpt, and in honor of today's Pride worship, I would like to discuss what welcoming means to me, its relationship with accountability, and what is at stake if we fail to heed the call to welcome. In Matthew 10:40, it is written, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me." In recalling Jesus' words, Matthew invites us to consider what it means to welcome and to be welcomed. Yes, to welcome involves inviting the physical body into a space over which you hold discretionary power. But it is more than just that. To welcome an individual body is to invite all that that body represents, the community from which it comes, and the thoughts, beliefs, and opinions therein, especially those that might differ from our own, those that make us uncomfortable, and those we might not yet understand. This implies that one effect of truly welcoming another is that we create an opportunity for ourselves to learn, grow, and change, such that we might begin to acknowledge the sacredness of difference and honor those who are different than ourselves. This becomes all the more difficult and therefore all the more crucial when these differences have been historically, systematically, and violently denied, erased, or delegitimized. In this way, welcoming involves a sacrifice. Unfortunately, all too often, the sacrifice has been minimal and largely material in its quality. Those whom engage in this form of welcoming may emerge from a charitable transaction materially worse off, but both they and the structures that made such charity necessary in the first place remain essentially unchanged. Instead, might we conceive of welcoming as the willingness to sacrifice our preconceptions and an openness to being so utterly and irrevocably transformed by another, such that we might not even recognize ourselves afterwards. I am aware that this is a big ask, and I am not so bold as to demand of others or of myself that we operate from a place of absolute purity and idealized selflessness. Yes, it is important that we approach opportunities to welcome with a sense of responsibility, but there is also something at stake for the welcomer. As stated in Matthew 10:41, whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. I choose to believe that injustice is both learned behavior and a lifelong series of choices. When we reject those who are different than that to which we are accustomed, and more importantly, when we fail to reflect and challenge the conditions, ideas, myths, and narratives that bestow some of us with the power to pass that judgment over others, and the structures that transform that judgment into valid belief, common sense, and even law, we deny ourselves the reward of the righteous. That is to say, we deny ourselves our own humanity. And even on such occasions, when we do welcome another unconditionally, with all of the discomfort and confusion that may attend to that choice, we will be gifted this reward of the righteous. But if we fail to do so in a sustained and ongoing way, it will be lost again. Matthew 10:42. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of the disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Implicit in these words is the potential to lose that which is gained through the act of welcoming. In this way, welcoming is not just an instantiation of goodwill, but rather a process and a way of life that involves a consistent and sustained willingness to change, to listen, to self-reflect, to humble oneself, to build relationships, and most importantly, tangible action. We are transformed not by the intention to welcome, but through the deed of welcoming and by holding ourselves to task for the impacts of those actions on others if and when they fall short. After all, being held accountable while uncomfortable is, I believe, a potential effect of feeling genuinely welcomed. Accountability is sometimes an expression of love and trust, in that we are honoring the agency of others and trusting that they will take the opportunity to listen and learn to care for us in the ways that we actually need to be cared for. I often worry that these expectations are so unrealistic that they constitute an unobtainable standard of conduct. I worry because I have witnessed others, as well as myself, fail to meet them, despite our best efforts and intentions. What gives me hope are those moments when these expectations are met, and I can turn to personal experience as illustrative. I think it is important to reiterate how welcomed I have felt by this congregation. Prior to the coronavirus outbreak, I had occasionally joined in on Holy Trinity's Sunday service. On one such occasion, after mustering up my courage, I arrived decked out in my favorite genderqueer attire, a long-sleeve cotton turtleneck, a flowing mid-calf pleated skirt, tights, combat boots, topped off with a bold red lip. And I was greeted by several of you, not with a once-over, but with direct eye contact and a handshake. During communion, when I felt a rising sense of dread as to how to respectfully decline in order to maintain my sobriety, a member of this congregation, who I believe is here today, assured me not to worry and showed me the proper protocol so that I might pass the chalice without taking a sip. Even outside of the context of a formal service, I have been asked on multiple occasions to facilitate and lead several meditations, discussions, and retreats hosted by Holy Trinity. What marks this as distinct from my experience with St. George's Church on the Hill 11 years prior is first, that my authentic self, my queer, mentally ill, alcoholic self, had been welcomed with grace. And secondly, that I had begun to welcome myself. In discussing this homily with my friend and our resident director, Zach, he proposed that without an inward-facing love, we cannot have an outward-facing love. Nor do I believe that we can receive love directed at us. Thought of in this way, welcoming and the unconditional love I believe it entails involves all three of these elements: self-love, love for others, and love from others. at the same time. We cannot have one without the others. Only when all three exist at once, in a sustained way, do I feel truly welcomed, and subsequently, do I feel pride. And contrary to its sinful casting, I believe pride to be the acknowledgement of and belief in one's own sacredness, which is produced internally as well as within and across communities. And I thank the Holy Trinity, Zach, Lee, Vivian, and all of you here for your part in that. And so, as we leave this space today, I invite all of us to reflect on how we might lay down our privileges and preconceptions in the faith that we might properly welcome others, and with the fortitude to own up to our mistakes and make the necessary changes if and when we should fall short. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sinclair.
Yes, St. Clair, thank you for reaching out to our minds, for touching our hearts, and for challenging us to act of welcome.